When we first went to the islands, myself and there was 5 other guys. I was 15 years old, and Makaha was kind of the spot then. That's where the best known fairly big wave spot was Makaha, and they also had hot dog surf too. So we went out to Makaha and rented an old Quonset hut for $30 a month, and there was 5 of us. It cost us all $5 a piece for rent. And we surfed all day, and when there wasn't any surf, we'd stick fish.
So how are you making the $5?
Well, I told a little white lie and got on the county lifeguard service when I was 15 too. So I was making pretty good money working for the lifeguards, and then I'd spend the next 25 winters I spent in Hawaii surfing both Makaha and the North Shore. But Makaha was just for the first year. The second year, we went over to the North Shore and spent our time over there, and that was really God really blessed that 7-mile stretch, just like He's blessed Australia with water and points and surf spots. And we're just a bunch of guys living on fumes and having the time of our life. Had no idea it was going to end up being Surf Center Earth, the focal point of big wave riding and so much attention.
Were you aware at the time that you were pioneers and you would be recognized in the future as groundbreakers?
No, absolutely not. I was just basically a young fun hog, having all the fun a guy could have, and raising hell at chasing good-looking girls at night, having a beer whenever possible, and surfing all day long. Wasn't a bad life. Well, I can say that if you're in trouble, there would be, but otherwise, we were all pretty aggressive when it came to surf. If you got in my way, those boards in those days were a lot bigger than they are now, so you made the wrong move in front of a guy and it hurt. But in those early days, I gravitated towards the Hawaiian guys, and some of my best friends to this day are Hawaiians, and Buffalo Keolana, who's almost like, in Hawaii, he's about the same stature as the Duke of Hanamoko, and Henry Priest, who's just passed away, and a lot of those guys. I ended up making boards for a bunch of the local Hawaiians in Haleiwa, and it got me a lot of mileage in the bars. They took care of me and kept me from getting hammered. Those boards went a long ways to relations. Yeah, we saw it happen. I mean, when we first went to the islands, and I'm still that way. I don't care much for contests, but it's okay. It provides young guys with a way to make a living and do what they want to do, so that's fine. But basically, we just surfed because we loved it, and then we saw contests kind of coming along, and as soon as the money gets into it, guys are elbowing each other, and then you get sponsors, and the whole thing kind of turns into diarrhea. Instead of being just for the love of it and for the fun of surfing, it becomes more of a job and a way to make money, and that always messes things up, I think. Well, like I was telling you, for some reason they elected me to give the check away at the XXL, which is a big guy that rode the biggest wave of the year gets 50 grand. And I know all the guys, and I can tell you this, and they probably don't like to see this on the air, but if they were getting a penny, they'd still be doing exactly what they're doing. You can't ride big waves for money. I mean, somebody can't give you some bunch of dough to go out and end up, ending your life. And a lot of those guys come very close. They're always pushing it right to the edge. A good friend of mine, Greg Noll, just about ate it at the Cortes Bank last year. He got a wave, and 2 more waves. He ate it on the wave. That wave rolled over him. The next wave in the set rolled over him. And he told me he was coming up and he could see daylight. And they wear these K-pop life preserver deals. And he passed out, from 10, 15 feet down. And the boat got to him, kick-started him, coughed up a bunch of blood, and he was back at Mavericks the next weekend, riding big waves again. So they are getting real close to the line of no return now. But I'm constantly surprised at what happens. I thought we were at the point, of riding as big as you could possibly ride, and now they've taken it way beyond that. So, my whole life was based around trying to ride a little bigger wave than I rode the day before, and it was I was very competitive, and so I had my family and my friends and surfing, which was right up there, and to me, the challenge of riding a bigger wave than the previous day or year was always in my mind. And we got an incredible day at Makaha where the swell was just gigantic, and I had my opportunity, and I just about said to hell with it. And but I had to actually paddle out of the lineup and just sit there with my head down and say, do I really want to do this? Or take a chance at not waking up tomorrow for some silly wave. And I came to the conclusion that when I'm an old fart like I am today, sitting here in my rocking chair, that I would still be complaining to myself that I missed my chance. So I was almost like I had no choice. I had to do it. And I rode the wave and got smashed, almost drowned, and that's the end of that story. Oh, I've come real close. I actually went through stages, and I've talked to other guys even today that they don't all relate the same way, but when you get to a certain point and you don't have the oxygen, things go red and you see stars. And I thought, boy, that's it. The other side of red is dead. And then as time went by, I got to where I could live with red pretty good, and that first stages of blackout. And then behind that came kind of a bluish color. And then stars like fireworks and stuff. And I never got beyond that. I'm not sure there's much beyond that. I think you might be talking to St. Peter after that. No, the day at Makaha was the biggest wave we've had in 30 years. In fact, a lot of the guys say that storm is still the biggest storm on record. And they're finding outer reefs now, so they're riding bigger waves than we did. But at that time, that was humongous. It was like I can't explain it. It's like you go along and you're at a certain level, and all of a sudden a level comes along that's 10 feet bigger or so, and it was a huge step up for me. And at that point I thought, well, I've been surfing for 35 years now, and I'm probably never going to see another wave like this. So, get off this ridiculous kick of having to catch the biggest wave, or I sit in the corner and pout and suck my thumb because, go see my therapist because I didn't get the biggest wave. Or that was gone. I got to spend some time with my family and just surf to enjoy it. I still surf some good days, but with size. But it wasn't that thing where I felt strangled, that I had to do it no matter what. And it was like, pardon the expression, you probably won't use this, but it was like taking a big crap. I just felt really good and at ease with the whole thing, it's just not like it is today where there's so much exposure and everything. Like, I'm very proud of the fact that I caught the first wave at Waimea Bay. Up to that time, it was, there was a lot of mystique about it. There was a haunted house in the Icao that supposedly they did live sacrifices on top, and we watched it for a couple of years, and one year it was just too perfect and wasn't real huge. We went out and I paddled into a wave and caught it, and we were afraid that somebody was going to flush the toilet and all the hollies were going to go down the tubes, but popped out the other end, still alive, let's go do it again. And that was really the beginning of of Waimea Bay, and that day, all the little mom and pop stores in Haleiwa all shut down, and they come out, and the point where they were all lined up around the point there, come out to see the Howleys commit suicide.
Fiddle with what the gods have made.
I never really thought about, I only thought about one thing, trying to catch the biggest wave I could. As far as legendary crap and all that, I had no idea that that the whole North Shore was going to turn into, the surf center of Earth. It was. Nor did I have any idea when I came to Australia and we brought the Malibu style boards that it was going to have the effect we did. I just knew I wanted to get in the water every day, and I wanted to go surfing. And if it wasn't me, it was going to be somebody else, in a year or so, because it was just probably overdue that somebody from from America didn't bring the boards over, But anyway, I've had a lot of fun in Australia, boy. They had trouble getting me back on the plane. I would have liked to have stayed. Yeah, classic guys. Some of they were all the pioneers of big waves. Ricky Gregg, who was the first guy, he was an oceanographer, and he could read the storms, and was kind of the first guy to really be able to predict, when a swell was going to hit a place. Now they've got it so wired they can, they can be sitting in Dana Point. 3 days they might be in Spain or someplace else because they read these swells so good. They can beat them there and be sitting there with their boards waxed up, ready to go. Maybe I could explain a little story. We did a film called Riding Giants for Sony, and we went to, 40 of the states. And I remember being up in 15 stories up in New York, and all these critics were asking us, the age-old question, what is it about surfing that hooks a person to the extent that they leave their family, don't pay attention to their job, and you just, you can't explain it, and when you do, it just turns to mush every time you try and explain it. Anybody that surfs knows. Pixie dust is my idea of trying to explain that once you're bit by that little bug, you're never the same. Never the same. It's just, it's not a sport. It's a way of life. It gets in your blood, and I see it here more in Australia than any place because everybody's so close to the water here, and they all love the water, and they're competitive, and they're just water people, and He's really smiled on this place with the, all the different breaks, and the water temperature's great, and they're the best. I really like them. I liked the girls better when I was young, but the guys are pretty good too. Oh, I've been so surprised so many times. I would have said that after I rode that wave at Makaha, it's going to be a hot day in hell before anybody gets past that point. And well, they've gone way beyond it now. So these guys are, they're just like we were to the extent that a human being has so much heart, and I think we had it then, but we didn't have all the stuff they've got now. We were lucky if we could get a helicopter out to us if we got in trouble. These guys have helicopters. They have little life deals they can pop and go up. They got jet skis, and all that makes a big difference in your confidence. I've talked to the guys, they say, just being down and getting the crap beat out of you and hearing that jet ski up there settles you down. That's what it's all about, settling down and getting the most out of your oxygen, and take it easy, you're going to be okay. Just hearing that jet ski buzzing around waiting for them to pop up, So all that stuff makes a huge difference, I think. And where it's going, who knows? If I'd have seen some of the pictures that he shot, the guy behind you there, boy, I would have said, can't be done. Yeah, some of the shots that Tim has taken of the guys that I give away the check to at XXL, Shane Dorian and Greg Long and Twiggy and a bunch of other guys, I wouldn't have believed it could be possible. And a lot of that's really neat that Tim's gotten these shots so that people can see what it's like, you know. I'm very proud, though, that I had some influence on, you know, the surfing in Australia. Midget Farley, who just passed away, we were talking one time in Bali, and he said, you know, Greg, he said, I was a 12-year-old kid standing on the beach watching you ride those boards, and he said, I decided right then and there that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And by God, he did. Right to the time he passed away, he was a big part of the ocean. Well, I lied about my age when I was 15. I got on with the county lifeguards in Hermosa Beach, and they had an invitation to come and compete, and you know, on all this rope stuff and marching around and everything. So they had time trials for the paddlers, and I paddled pretty good. You wouldn't know it from looking at me now, but I could paddle it back then pretty good, and I made the team and threw my board in the plane and came over, and the rest is what it is. You know, I just don't know how much farther can go. God almighty, you know, how much. They talk about a 100-foot wave, and I'm going, oh, bullshit. But I'm beginning to wonder now. I think it could probably be done, you know. These guys they're so good, and they are really good athletes. They watch, I mean, you know, we were just drinking and raising hell and having the time of our life and didn't pay attention to anything, but we spent so much time in the water that we were in excellent shape. These guys now work on their conditioning as well, you know, and plus they got all the trick stuff and the skis and everything, so who knows where it's going to end. Boy, I'm so bad at, you know, I could go on. There's Kimbo Hollinger, Ricky Gregg, Peter Cole, Jose Angel. There was a core group of about 10 guys that were really riding the biggest of the big waves, and one Hawaiian, a fellow by the name of Kealoha Icao, and he was an excellent friend. He was one of my very best friends, but so typical of Hawaiians, you know, the haoles are all out there elbowing each other and gritting their teeth and, you know, taking off on these things and growling, you know, and here's Kealoha sliding down the face of a 25-foot wave, totally relaxed, with a big smile on his face, and that's just part of those Hawaiian genes coming out, you know. The ones that, you know, that are good in the ocean, they just have a special relationship with the ocean that nobody else gets to have but Hawaiians, and it's when you see it, you know it. It was, that is a very good description, a band of brothers. I mean, if a guy was in trouble, man, I would go out of my way to help the guy at the risk of my own life. At the same time, I'd step on his toes and poke him in the eye if I thought it'd get me a better position on a wave to beat him out. So, a band of brothers, yeah, and it is today even more so, I think. We were kind of, I don't know, my era was kind of ego-driven, and I mean, there's some dandies out there, myself included, you know, that probably had way more ego than we should, but I thought, man, maybe that's what it takes to ride big waves for a long time, and now I see Greg and Twiggy and all them guys getting together and helping each other, and, you know, like when Greg goes to South Africa, he stays at Twiggy's house, and Twiggy comes over to Dana Point and stays with Greg, and they all interact, and they're all best friends. And they show that film, and you see those guys hug each other like, you know, there's 3,000 idiots screaming in the stands, you know, at that XXL thing, and they're oblivious to it. They see the waves, and they get so sucked in, and takes them right back to where they were, and they're hugging their, you know, their buddies and stuff. So that band of brothers stuff is going strong today. That's what it's all about, you know, sex and adrenaline. And I'm not sure, well, I know which one's better, but the adrenaline's harder to get. well, you mentioned George Downing, and he was my mentor. You know, he was the guy when I was 12 years old, 13 years old, and riding Makaha, that when the magazines would come back or the pictures would come back, that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be George Downing and Buzzy Trent. And those were the two guys that were riding Makaha at its biggest. But then life moves on. When we came over and our guys were the first myself and 6 other guys were the first guys to actually rent a house and live on the North Shore, like full-on surf Nazis, and just do nothing but surf and catch waves and dive for our food and steal pineapples from Pupukea and climb coconut trees to eat coconuts. I shouldn't say this, but I ate so much stuff like that I couldn't take a real crap for a month. Just because we didn't have any money, you know. These guys now, you know, they compete and they stay in nice places and they got all this good stuff, fancy cars. God, we were like living like rats over there and on fumes. Trent was just a 1 in a million guy that was probably the funniest guy that you could, and you can't describe him in words. They've tried to do a couple of magazine articles, and you just can't. He had such a magnetic personality that he would start telling a surf story, and the next thing he'd jump up on the hood of the car, and guys would start coming in from the sidelines. The next thing you know, he'd be on top of the car, waving his arms like Jesus Christ or something to the multitude. You know, there are so many great stories about Buzzy Trent. Huge, really built guy and tough guy. He didn't drink, and I'd go over to Makaha once in a while to see Buff and him, and he was living in a Quonset hut, and I brought a case of beer over and taunted him, and he finally grabbed a beer, and then another and another. He got totally shit-faced, and an hour or so into the thing, you know, those Quonset huts got the metal, and on either end they have wood. Well, he had to take a whiz, and he's in the middle of a story, and he's kind of walking, but he misses the door, and he blows right through the wood. I'm looking out through this jagged wood. This is a true story. He's whizzing in the field. He walks back through the wood, continues on with his story. That's Buzzy Trent. Yeah, Georgie and Buzzy were, that was Makaha was their baby. And the North Shore, they never felt as at home, I don't think, over there. George was a smart surfer. He thought everything out. He thought his boards out, and he had it upstairs better than anybody. And Buzzy was just kind of bulled his way through everything, but they both caught some big waves. Eddie Icao and his brother Clyde were just little farts this big running around at sunset when I was surfing Sunset. And when I'd come in after I was done, Eddie would come up and he'd say, Uncle, I can use your board. I'd say, sure. And he'd paddle out, you know, maybe from here to across the street, you know, just the soup inside. And he'd paddle for the soup and ride it to the beach and go out and do it again. And he'd keep doing it all day if I didn't need to go back in the water, you know, to get my board. And then the next year, they had their own boards and they were a little farther out, still not the break. And then after about 3 years, they're on the outside riding the bigger waves. And Pops, their dad, had binoculars, and he would pace up and down the beach watching the boys, make sure they popped up when they took off on a wave. And after, 8 or 10 years of that, Eddie became a really, really good surfer. And one of the early day, Kealoha was the first, but Eddie was one of the very first Hawaiians to ride Waimea. Well, I started when I came to Australia here. I don't know if you ever seen Warren Miller's ski movies. He went to New York and bought me a Bell and Howell for $100, a little clunker. And so I shot films when I came over here. and then shot a bunch of film of the islands, and then shot some stuff of the coast. Pieced it all together and put a little soundtrack on it, magnetic soundtrack, and started in Santa Barbara and played it up and down the coast. And that was the first of 3 different movies. And finally, after 3 years, my board business was going so good I just didn't have the time. And plus Bruce had gotten in on it then, and Severson, and those guys were better than I was at making movies. And so I just focused on making boards and surfing.
If I can get that release from you,
yeah,
anything else? Just,
it only cost you $1,000.
Tim can use my interview for his movie, The Big Wave Project.
Who?
Tim Bonathan.
I don't know who he is.
You met him.
Tim. Yeah.
That's me.
Oh. God, how can I embarrass myself so badly? I thought you were talking about some guy that shows movies or something.
It's me too.
I'm sorry, man.
It's all right.